Tonight, we drift through its quiet fields and ancient temples. From the slow flow of the Tigris and Euphrates to the first stories carved into stone. Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, a plain of silt and sky where reeds tremble in the breath of hot winds, where the Tigris runs swift, sharp as a blade, and the Euphrates glides broad and brown, carrying secrets from distant snows. Here, long before marble temples rose by the Mediterranean, long before iron sang in the hands of empire, people pressed wedge marks into wet clay and taught time to keep itself. They learned to coax bread from bitter earth with canals and channels, with levees and gated sluices. They looked up and named the wanderers in the night sky, tallied the days and the omens, and told each other that order could be hammered out of flood and dust. At dawn, the plain lies hushed. River haze milks the air. Water birds stitch the sky with thin cries. In the fields, men lift shadows, long-armed poles with counterweights that rise and fall like breathing, drawing water into furrows that glimmer in the light. The smell is a blend of damp loam and straw, olives and bitumen, goat and smoke. Children chase each other along a canal bank. A dog barks. A potter's wheel hums on its peg, turning clay into bowls, into jars, into small votive figurines that will one day stand silent before a god. Uruk comes first in the old stories, a city of brick upon brick, built by hands that knew the measure of mud. Its walls run on like a thought that cannot end. Within them, streets curve about courtyards, and houses open inward to shade and privacy. The temple district rises on packed terraces, a stepped bulk where incense smolders and white-robed priests move like slow birds. On a cool morning, you might pass a scribe's school, a tablet house, where boys copy signs again and again. Wedge, 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 vertical, diagonal, horizontal. The master wraps a reed stylus against a palm and says, "Hold the line straight. Keep your signs the same size." Again. And the boys begin again. Cuneiform, the script that looks like rain on hard earth. It began as little pictures, barley spike, jar, fish, but the pictures grew lean and abstract as thought climbed from barter to treaty to hymn. A scribe dips his stylus, cuts 4 neat wedges into a name that will outlive the hand that wrote it. On another tablet, he counts sheep for the temple, ewe, lamb, ram, and notes the rations of beer and bread. On a third, he copies a king's boast in lines that stride like soldiers. I, the shepherd of peoples, dug a canal, raised a wall, humbled the proud. The tablets dry in the sun, then stack in jars by the hundreds, an archive of grain and vow and gossip, all the little truths an empire needs to stay awake. The ziggurat rises, not a mountain but a made thing, stairs where feet grow small against tiers of blue and white and black brick. On the summit, a shrine. Inside, a bed for the god to rest, and a table for offerings, dates in a bowl, lamb laid out on a tray, beer in a jar that sweats in the heat. Priests wash their hands with water poured from a lion-headed spout. Women sing in a language that tastes of salt and dust. The city believes itself held together by these acts, by the turning of wheels, the burning of fat, the measured music, like a loom that keeps a time and fate interlaced. In the market, copper from the mountains gleams beside obsidian knives from places where fire once froze in black glass. Traders in tight-wrapped turbans haggle over lapis the color of deep rivers. A man from far Dilmun boasts of timber and pearls. A boatman from Magan smells of tar. Someone offers carnelian beads from a land called Meluha, so distant that its syllables taste like rumor. The temple scribes take their cut, the governor's men take theirs, and still the market hums because movement is life here. The rivers haul bales, the donkeys creak under panniers, and contracts click into clay with a certainty that feels like law. Sargon of Akkad walks through this dust one afternoon, as the stories tell it, his sandals leaving shallow crescents. He is no priest-king of the old model, but a breaker of borders. He gathers city-states like a string, gathers beads, ties the string tight, and calls it empire. Soldiers march in spear-bright ranks. Canals are patrolled. Akkadian words braid into Sumerian prayers until language itself becomes a braided rope strong enough to drag a people forward. In the palace yard, captives stack bricks. In the hall, singers pound drums and chant about Naram Sin, Sargon's grandson, who wears a horned crown in sculpture and climbs a mountain of enemies like a man climbing time. For a while, the center holds. Messengers change horses at reed-walled stations. Silver and cedar and grain move under seal. But drought can write its own cuneiform on the land, and when the sky clenches its fist and the rivers sulk low in their beds, even empire must learn humility. The code comes, not the first list of rules ever, but the most enduring song of iron fairness set down in clay. Hammurabi, king of Babylon, has it etched into a black pillar that rises like a spine. At its head, he stands before Shamash the sun god, receiving the rod and ring of justice. Below, the laws hum with the plain arithmetic of living together. If a builder's house falls and kills the owner, the builder dies. If a man puts out another's eye, his eye is lost. If a field is flooded because a neighbor was lazy with his bank, the neighbor pays. Harsh, yes. But, in its harshness, a kind of equality that refuses to forget the poor. Minimum wages of barley, protection for widows and orphans, rights for merchants whose cargo sinks where crocodiles dream. The pillar is both promise and threat, gleaming in the courtyard where petitioners shade their eyes and listen. Night lingers long in Mesopotamia. Summer heat keeps voices low and doors open to the breeze. Story rises like smoke. The epic of Gilgamesh is told, king of Uruk, 2/3 divine and 1/3 human, who wrestled a wild man named Enkidu until they loved each other like brothers. Together they felled the cedar guardian. They insulted a goddess. They buried Enkidu, and then Gilgamesh ran in panic from death's certainty. A king who could not accept the ordinary sadness that binds us all. He crossed deserts, met a tavern keeper who told him to eat, to dance, to love his child's hand. Advice as simple as bread, and then sought Utnapishtim, the flood survivor who knew what it meant to be the last man standing after the gods unmade the world. There is no permanence, Utnapishtim said, or something like it, while the river hissed. Gilgamesh found a plant of youth, lost it to a snake, returned home, and learned to count his city's walls as his true immortality. The story spreads because it carries the taste of baked clay and salt tears, because a king in fear is every person in fear, because the river is a mirror. Inanna, Ishtar, walks by night in stories, fierce and jeweled, goddess of love and war. She descends to the underworld and returns shorn of powers, then claims a substitute, and calls it balance. Dumuzi, Tammuz, shepherd of green seasons, dies and rises as the fields do, teaching farmers to read wheat as a liturgy. Marduk fights the sea dragon of chaos and splits her body to make the sky and earth, then measures the stars into the duty of months. These myths are not idle talk. They are weather and water law told sideways. They teach a farmer when to cut, a bargeman when to tie off, a priest when to burn fat, so the god will smile on a city shivering under omens. Assyria hardens in the north, where hills break the monotony of the plain. Iron bites deeper here. Nineveh and Khorsabad and Nimrud shine with carved stone slabs on which winged bulls, Lamassu, guard the gates with curled beards and soft leonine feet. The kings speak in a grammar of terror and order. They deport whole populations and plant them elsewhere like olive cuttings, to break rebellion and spread skill. They catalog the world's trees, lions, tributaries, languages, pigments. In the palace, a librarian king, Ashurbanipal, gathers the tablets the way a river gathers silt. Medical recipes, omen lists, hurricane hymns, grammar drills, flood accounts, love charms. When the library burns centuries later, the fire bakes the clay so the words survive. The paradox of catastrophe, flames preserving breath. In the back alleys of any city, Uruk, Lagash, Kish, Babylon, you can find a brewer thumping a jar, a weaver beating a warp, a goldsmith blowing on coals until metal turns docile. You can hear a mother bargaining for dates, a boy reciting multiplication tables in 60-based numbers that spiral like galaxies, 60, 120, 180, until fractions become music. Priests look up at Jupiter and Mars and lean over water clocks. They mark eclipses. They predict returns. They set festivals to a calendar that keeps faith with both moon and sun, a braided time stronger than either. The day itself is measured in larger and smaller, as if the whole cosmos were a jug to be portioned fairly. 12 and 60. Halves and thirds and sixths. A mathematics of sharing. Floods mean everything. The Tigris snarls, quick to bite. The Euphrates broods and swells. Both bless and ruin. Silt thickens the fields. Salt creeps up from below and whitens the soil like old bones. Farmers rotate barley with fallow, cut new canals, abandon poisoned plots. A governor writes to a king about the shortage of palms for levee repair. A priest urges more offerings to the river's spirit. A worker wipes his brow and says nothing, because his hands know that mud is the only scripture that matters today. In dry years, the canals dwindle to mirrors of sky. In fat years, the banks go soft, and a boy catches fish with his hands in puddles left like coins by the retreating water. So the city spreads its risk across gods and governors, across ritual and rule, and still the river keeps its own counsel. Ships of bitumen-sealed planks nudge at reed-choked quays. Donkeys bray under the weight of grain sacks stamped with a cylinder seal. Little stone rolls carved with scenes of heroes and bulls, gods and trees of life. A merchant presses his seal across wet clay, and a procession of tiny figures walks forever around his name. Proof, identity, style. The seal is also a story. A goddess who pours water from twin jars, two streams that are really the two rivers braided into prosperity. A lion-grappling hero who looks suspiciously like Gilgamesh. A king in fringed robe standing before a seated deity, hand raised, petition uttered. The roll leaves its path the way a plow leaves furrows. The city reads those furrows and remembers. Babylon rises again and again, a phoenix of brick and myth. In later days under Nebuchadnezzar II, it gleams with glazed lions pacing blue walls. The Ishtar Gate shines as if a river has been made vertical, blue for deep water, rosettes for stars. Streets run straight to the great Ziggurat Etemenanki, the house that anchors heaven and earth. Strangers from sardonic islands, from high cold plateaus, from seacoasts where surf snarls at rocks, come and whisper, "Is this the city whose garden hangs in air?" Maybe there were gardens, terraced beds watered by hidden screws, trees casting shade on balconies. Or maybe the garden is a story about what a city wishes to be, ripe, impossible, water-laden in a country of thirst. War moves like weather through the centuries. Bows stiffen, chariots scream over hard-packed ground, shields lock, lances lower. The plain has little cover, only dust devils and rumor. Scouts ride out at dusk and listen for the cough of horses. Horns sound thin and urgent in heat. A king to whom the gods have loaned courage prays before a bronze standard tipped with a crescent. Let my right hand be steady. Let the wheel not break. Let my name be a brick that lasts. The battle breaks and closes like a mouth. A line collapses where the river shoulder softens its bank. The victors bargain with gods. The vanquished bargain with captains. Everyone bargains with thirst. Within the cities, law outlasts battle. Archives are stubborn. A debt renewal tablet survives to tell a small domestic war. A brother and a brother-in-law arguing over 3 donkeys and a bride price, resolved by an oath before Nana the moon. They shall not trouble each other. They shall keep peace. Another tablet signs over a garden in perpetuity to a sister who will tend the palms. Another lists the daily offerings for a minor goddess who protects door hinges and oven mouths. Nothing is too small to be named, and once named, nothing is too small to be remembered. The crafts breed their own devotions. Brickmakers know the moods of mud, how much straw to chop in, how long to cure in shadow before the sun's hammering. Reed cutters read the wind through marshes that glow at sunset like bronze. Potters keep in their palms the memory of every bowl they ever coaxed from spinning clay. When their wheels spin at night, the sound is almost a lullaby. Metal workers learn the temper where copper yields and tin transforms it, bronze ringing bright as morning. Lute makers tune gut and wood until a song climbs like a bird from the instrument's belly. Singers lay words like bricks, chant-like, with refrains that turn back on themselves the way irrigation channels loop to meet the river. Kingship in this country is a weathered office. Before a crown sits on a head, a king must prove himself a canal digger, a wall raiser, a feast giver, a lawgiver. He must be a shepherd before he is a lion. He must keep gods fed and widows safer than they were yesterday. He must not let the fields turn white with salt. He must see the city as a net he holds tight at all edges. In return, the people let him carve his name into bricks that no one will see once the wall is up. They let him build a gate large enough to invite dreams. They let him keep lions if he wants, and sit under cedar from distant mountains. But every king learns this. Clay remembers everything, and clay is not sentimental. It will preserve his boasts beside his failures, his harvest records beside the list of Marduk's golden bowls sold off to pay mercenaries in a lean year. Scholars sit with omen lists. If a sheep's liver shows a notch here, the city will be favored. If there, a plague will come. They are not fools. They are statisticians at the edge of language. They have watched the sky for generations, and taught their sons where Jupiter stands when the rivers rise well, where Saturn broods when locusts gnaw. They cut the world into signs because the world cuts them back with flood and dust, and signs are handles. A king asks, "Will this campaign prosper?" The priest answers in clauses that carry caution like hidden water. If you go now, and if the moon is with you, and if you sacrifice properly, the king hears the music of if and goes anyway. In the lowlands, marsh dwellers build reed houses that float on soil like sleeping boats. They herd water buffalo whose wet noses plow the surface into ripples. Fishermen cast nets in fan shapes that glitter in morning light. A woman smokes fish over a clay hearth under a woven roof, while her child drums a reed mat with a spoon. In the highlands beyond the plain, shepherds roll their tents and move with flocks that embroider hillsides. Their wool becomes city cloth. Their stories become city oaths. The plain and its edges braid livelihoods until the word Mesopotamian means less a bloodline and more a choreography of tasks tuned to river time. Exile arrives one empire later, as empires do. Soldiers lead lines of people away from broken gates toward foreign cities where they will plant new gardens and learn the names of foreign winds. Singers carry laments in baskets like bread. O city, your walls are plucked like a harp, your gates weep bitumen tears. On a far river bank, an old man tells his granddaughter how dates tasted in the courtyard shade in a city whose name the wind has already worn thinner. And yet, when he teaches her to press a reed into mud for fun, the old alphabet wakes. A little tablet dries by a cook fire and survives because someone forgot it. It will be found in 1,000 years. It will say nothing important. It will say everything. Libraries are time's boats. In a valley of broken palaces, a British soldier stumbles in the 19th century over a wedge of clay with signs on it. He sends it to a scholar. The scholar reads a flood. Another learns a king's shopping list for temple cedar. Another finds a joke. A dog walked into a tavern and said, the punchline worn away by time. We like to think everything we care about is new. The tablets say otherwise. They show us our same old appetite, bread, gossip, prayer, law, pressed into shapes we can still trace with a fingertip. The wheel turns in workshops. The sail lifts on riverboats. The plow bites. These are simple machines, but in Mesopotamia they spin empires quietly. A wheel is a circle teaching wood to forget it was once a tree. A sail is a cloth convincing wind to pull its weight. A plow is a blade that asks the earth to be generous again. Farmers lean into yokes. Oxen breathe steam in winter. In summer, the horizon blurs and the plain smells like a kiln. Always the same prayer anchored to different gods. Let our hands not be wasted. Let the harvest sweeten our mouths. Let the river bring us what we cannot carry ourselves. The city plan is a memory of needs. Walls for raids, gates for trade, alleys narrow for shade, courtyards for light, roofs flat for sleeping under stars, drains for the sudden tantrum of rain, granaries placed where a fire cannot leap easily from house to house. The ziggurat stands not in arrogance but in negotiation with the sky. We meet you halfway. Send us dew at night. Let the morning be kind. Pilgrims climb its steps at festivals, drums like heartbeats, horns like long breaths. Dancers in fringe stamp dust into patterns that will vanish by noon and be remade at dusk. A letter from a wife to her husband away on business. Do not stay long. The child is growing. The barley is late. The neighbor's goat ate the reeds. I have spoken to my brother. He will lend us 2 men for harvest. Come home by the day of the new moon. I have kept your cloak safe from moths. The letter is sweet, ordinary, urgent. It crosses 100 miles of reeds and dust on the back of a man who knows the road by heart. He takes shade at a sycamore. He drinks from a water bag. He hums a hymn to Nabu, patron of scribes, that promises safe passage to words. A physician in a small room lists remedies: crushed juniper, beer, honey, a whisper over a liver. He is half apothecary, half priest, and altogether practical. He knows when a fever will break and when to tell the family to call the singer who knows the songs that help the dying loosen their fingers from the world. A midwife's hands smell of oil and wool. She has learned how to turn a breech baby with patience, how to tie the cord with gut string. In a court, 2 men argue over a boundary stone, their tempers white with heat. The judge orders the stone dug up and the inscription read. The old marker says the line lies 3 cubits from the canal. Someone measures. The line is reset. A small war averted by wedges dried into clay a lifetime ago. The cosmos above the plain is a clock. Priests note the helical rising of Sirius. They scratch onto tablets a list of eclipses and the fates that followed. They are wrong often and right often, like all who predict, but their record is discipline itself. The habit of noticing becomes a technology. Later, others will inherit this habit and teach it different names: astronomy, geometry, history. But the seed was a priest on a roof in Babylon, counting heartbeats as a star grazed the edge of a temple tower. When the Persians come, the land does not fall silent. The rivers keep their conversations with reed and bank. The scribes keep tally, now in the service of a great king whose couriers fly over road and plain like arrows. Aramaic joins the chorus of tongues. Coin jingles, where barley once weighed heavy in jars. The old gods are not ousted, they are given new neighbors, a polite nod in crowded temples. Later still, Macedonian voices echo in courtyards, then Roman, then Arab. The script changes shape, but the clay stays stubborn. The habit of writing everyday life remains a rope tied across centuries. Stand at dusk where the 2 rivers nearly kiss. Reeds make a black lace against a sky of copper and violet. Buffalo shift and sigh. Far off, a line of date palms draws itself across the horizon like script. The plain releases the day's heat in long breaths. Somewhere, someone recites a hymn older than iron, and a child falls asleep to the sound, not knowing that the words under her pillow were first pressed into clay when the world was young with cities. Mesopotamia is not a single story, but a braid of them. The farmers, the scribes, the potters, the queens, the captives, the gods. It is the math of cooperation engraved beside the math of conquest. It is a calendar that forgave the moon's mischief and still kept the feasts on time. In the museums of far capitals, tablets sit behind glass like dull brown loaves. People pass and smile politely at the ancientness of it all. They do not hear the market noise trapped in those wedges. They do not smell the wet clay drying on a courtyard wall. They do not feel the relief in a widow's shoulders when a law protected her grain. But if you lean close, if you let your eyes rest on the tiny discipline of each sign, You can sense the old city waking, the clatter of a wooden lock, the scrape of a door, sandals in dust, a rooster, a priest clearing his throat, a woman telling her daughter how to braid hair for the festival, a boy reciting, stumbling, starting again, smiling when he gets it right. Imagine a barge pushing upriver in a wind that fights it at every bend. The pilot stands on a raised platform with a long pole. He reads the current the way a scribe reads tablets, by faint changes, by the pattern you only see when you've seen it 1,000 times. The crew eat bread with onions, dip it in a jar of beer so thick it has to be sucked through a straw. They sing to keep time because time has to be held, or it slips back downriver. At night they tie up to a stump of old palm. The boat creaks. Frogs stitch darkness with pulse. The pilot looks at the stars and names them under his breath. He is not a priest. He is a sailor, but the names are for everyone. The sky belongs to all who work under it. A storyteller stands in a tavern yard where jars are buried cool in the ground. He spreads his hands and says he has a new version of an old thing. Gilgamesh will go farther this time. Enkidu will not die, or if he does, he will return with a wildflower from a place beyond maps. People laugh. People hush him. A woman with flour on her hands leans at the doorway. Her son will later press a sign wrong way on a tablet and be scolded. But now he listens. The story threatens to end, and then continues because someone whistles softly and tosses a date pit at the storyteller's feet and says, "And then." The oldest technology on Earth is this word. Then. Wander east in spring to the edges of steppe, where the river's flood fans into lagoons peppered with birds. Traders camp there because mosquitoes are a tax in season. They trade anyway, because profits sing louder than bites. A carpenter from the city learns a steppe song, takes it home, and builds a new rhythm into a door that thumps right when you shut it. It is not recorded. It does not need to be. It lives in the palm's memory and the wood's grain. A scholar of later ages will say that Mesopotamia invented the city. Perhaps the city invented Mesopotamia, a way of compelling rivers to behave, of teaching strangers to exchange more than knives and words. It is hard to say. What is easier is this. Here, humans chose counting and codifying, chose temples and taxes, chose the burden and pleasure of neighbors. The price is high. Walls to repair, watchmen to pay, sewage to divert, quarrels to adjudicate. The reward is higher. Songs that need many voices, harvests that require cooperation, archives that let a child in a later century know the shape of a father's name. Rain rarely falls, but when it does, the land smells like promises kept at last. Children run bareheaded into the courtyard. A grandmother sets out bowls to catch what the gutters spill. In a temple, someone unties the ribbon around a store of cedar and breathes a mountain into a desert city. In a palace, someone opens a chest and lifts a necklace of lapis that looks like night captured and tamed. In a reed hut, a woman ties a new mat, her fingers quick, her pattern older than her grandmother's oldest song. The end of every empire looks like the end of the world to those inside it. Yet the rivers keep their work. A king dies. A new stamp bites clay. A gate is renamed. The market does not change its smell. The gods shift thrones like actors changing masks. Apollo will tangle himself with Shamash in the mouths of new priests. Zeus will nod at Marduk, and both will listen if farmers keep the offerings steady. A child will learn letters in a script now running like water left to right, not right to left, and still the lesson is the same. Make signs small and true. Keep your line straight. Again. Today, if you walk the mounds where cities slept and crumbled, you can pick up a brick in which a king's name is kneaded like spice. You can stand where a street once ran bright with pottery shards and donkey dung and spilled beer. The wind slides a veil of dust across your feet. Far off, tractors cough in new fields. A boy on a motorbike chases his own trail in circles, laughing. He does not know the name of Sargon. He does not need to. He knows the turnings of his road. He will learn to bargain in a market where olives pile like green coins. He will press his thumb into a sensor in a city office where once a cylinder seal would have rolled. The continuity is not in forms. It is in gestures, counting, bargaining, praying, carrying. Look again at those two rivers. Not twins, but brothers who argue and reconcile, who flood and fall, who carry and steal. This land between them is a compromise written in water. Fields do not last without canals. Canals do not last without hands. Hands do not last without bread. Bread does not last without law. Law does not last without story. Story does not last without a place to gather and tell it. So the city stands, and when it falls, another rises not far away. The names change. The bricks are new. The smell of warm clay is the same. And if at last you grow sleepy with all this counting and chanting and marching, lie back and let the plain speak. Hear the slow slap of water against a mud bank. Hear the long breath of a buffalo. Hear a far drum. Temple or tavern, it hardly matters. Rhythm is rhythm. Above you the constellations wheel as they always have. The archer draws, the bull lowers its head, the goatfish swims where rain is promised. Somewhere a scribe finishes a tablet and presses his nail into the corner as a signature, the smallest of human marks. He sets the clay on a shelf, he blows on it. He closes his eyes and, just for a moment, sleeps in the heart of a city that taught humanity to write its own weather into stone. And so Mesopotamia endures, not as a single king or a single law or a single hymn, but as a habit of hands working with mud and number, with star and story. A civilization that braided rivers and people together until each could not be imagined without the other. The land between two rivers, the classroom where time learned to keep itself, the workshop where history first learned to leave fingerprints, the market where strangers grew neighbors, and the temple where even gods were taught to be punctual. Here, the world first whispered to itself, "Let us make a city. Let us make a calendar. Let us make a promise." And then, in the long ellipses between flood and harvest, kept it.